Alright, so in the previous video we went through the motions of creating texture maps, and now what I want to show you guys is how to take our model out of Mudbox and send it over to Maya. So the first thing I want to do is go through all of my models, the eyeballs, the body and so on, and bring it down to its lower level. So I'm gonna page down. I'm gonna leave the body not at level 0, which is the level I brought from Maya. I'm gonna page up, and I'm gonna go through each and every one of these. Okay, I'm gonna page down. There we go. So everything now is in level 0 other than the body in this case. Now, depends on the model and what you do. You should page it down to level 0. In this case, the reason I decided on level 1 was just because I need the information. So if I would page down, I wouldn't have enough information on the model. Okay, so because it will be, just a few polygons. But if I go up, it's it's just like a smooth action in Maya. So what I want to do now is just send it over. So how do we do it? It's very difficult, so pay attention. You go to File, Send to Maya, Send Selection as New Scene. Now, because I haven't chosen anything, it's going to scream at me, hey, choose something. Or just send the entire scene. So I'm going to tell Maya just to go ahead and send it to Maya as just the entire scene. Now it's telling me, it's asking me basically, Mudbox is asking me to select what level to send each and every object. So if I send as base mesh, it's going to just send it as the lowest level. But if I go ahead and press this button here, which says send mesh as current level, it's going to send it as the current level that I have, which is, let's say, if you want to send your model in a higher res, you can. But in this case, I'm going to go send mesh at current level because my mesh is in level 1 and not at level 0. So I'm going to just press this button and let it do its job. So it's now asking me if to save the current scene in Maya, and I say do not save, and it's going to open Maya. So let me just pause for a second and make sure that Maya comes up. Alright, so Maya's come up, and what you can see before I move over to Maya, you can see down here in the side, you can see a connection to Maya is now connected. So I mean, I can continue working and creating different, fixing the textures and so on, or continuing modeling, and all I have to do is press update and we'll update in Maya. So let's move over to Maya. I'll scroll out and I'll press 5, and you can see here's my little guy, little lizard. And I'll open the outliner window, and you can see all of my elements are in here. Alright, so a couple of things. Firstly, if I press 6, you can see I get my textures in. Everything looks wonderful. The only thing is, if I go into my material, I can see everything's been sent to the right place. And if I go into my file, I could see it's been sent to images, and then wherever it is in my project set. Alright, basically what it will do, the minute I save the Mudbox file, wherever I save the Mudbox file, will open a file which will then hold the textures. Now, in this particular case, I'm going to render in mental ray, and I do not want to keep the Maya material. So let me just take care of that. So firstly, I'm going to group this, and the reason is right now, excuse me, right now I'm I'm working in centimeters, and this lizard is a dinosaur. I mean, he's about 2 meters by 2 meters big, and 2 meters by 3 meters long. He's pretty big. So I do want to go and make him smaller. So I'm going to go 0. I'll just take it down to about 1%. So this is the original size that I modeled this guy. Now, why am I taking him down to this size? Basically because I want him to be in real world size. Would be his size in the real world, and that will just help me later on in MentalRay. So what I'm going to do is the following. I'm going to create a floor. All right, just something for him to stand upon, and I'm going to create 2 spheres. All right. Now these spheres are basically are here to help me with rendering. All right, for using HDR, and I'll show you how to use those in a minute. So I've moved over everything. Now let's start putting everything together. So firstly, I'll create a layer for my ground plane, GP for ground plane, save. All right, and I'll create a layer for the environment balls. All right, EB. Abbreviate everything, just makes life easier. All right, so I'm going to open my hypershader. All right, the hypershader is open, and automatically you could see that I have materials ready for me, but I want to use MentalRay, so I'm going to choose materials, and then I'm going to choose MI material X, and as you can see, it's red down here. So if it's red, that means my render settings, all right, are on Maya software. So I'm going to change it to MentalRay. First things I have to take care of. I'm going to turn on my color management, and I'm going to go to render outputs, and here I'm going to remove use default lights. The reason is I want to use environment-based lighting because it just works out better that way. All right, so let's create our environment-based lighting. So I'm going to open my environment-based lighting tab in the indirect lighting. Create environment light, environment ball, and all I need to do is bring in a file, which is an HDR in this case. All right, there we go. And now I'm going to turn on Final Gather. So I turn on the Final Gather, and first thing I'm going to just bump down some things. So it's going to be 32 in the accuracy, 32 in the point interpolation, and I'm going to give it 1 bounce. All right. So let's test render. Oh, before I test render, I'm going to go to common, and 960 by 540 is nice, but it's a little, I want this to render pretty quick, so I'm going to go 480 by 270, which will make it small, but will render pretty quick. So let's do that. All right, so it's rendered out, and we could see, we got some pretty good lighting. It's, that's not there yet, but we'll fix that up. So first thing I want to do is change all my materials to MentalRay materials, because they will behave better. So let's go ahead and do that. So here's my first material, which is going to be my floor. All right. And I'll use one of the presets, which is just a simple matte just something flat. So there we go, and I'm going to use this on one of the balls as well. Alright, so let's create another material. This one's going to be used for to check reflections, and I'm going to just use the chrome for that one. Alright, and I'll call this chrome. Again, I'll abbreviate just to make it easy for me. And I'll create one last one. Whoops, wrong material. And overwrite. So now all I have to do is start putting this together. Alright, so let's do that. So first thing I want to do is put in my texturing. So we'll go to color under diffuse. Alright, file. And here I'll automatically put sRGB, and the reason is because it will probably be a JPEG. And I'll put on Mudbox, which keeps the textures crisp. And I'll go into my file and I'll look for my Lizzie texture. I'll find it in a sec. I think I call it Lizzie texture occlusion. Ah, there we go. Alright, so there we go. I also dropped down the in Photoshop. I did add. Alright, I added the ambient occlusion in Photoshop and so on. I'll probably post a little video about that later. So let's render and see how this came out. So we'll bring this up. Start with my first render, and here we go. Batch it. Alright, so great. So I got the texture. He's very glossy. I'm going to have to take care of that. Also, it's a bit dark, and I could see that all my lovely detail that I didn't in Mudbox is gone. So how do I get it back? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to disconnect, break connection, the material. I'm going to make him, like sort of orangey, just so we can see the difference. So what I'm going to do as well is I'm going to leave the highlights, the glossiness. So I need to tell Maya now to bring in those maps that I used to displace. So how am I going to cause this to displace properly? So it's fairly simple. What I'm going to do is I'm going to choose the lizard, and I'll press this icon here, which will graph the material. And you'll see this icon here, which is basically the options to bring in displacement. And I'll bring in my displacement. So the minute I create a displacement, I get this icon here, which is like a bump map. It's fairly the same. And it's sending me over to my file, which is over here. So I could bring in my file. So because it's an EXR, I'll tell it to be linear, RGB, and I will go and bring in the displacement. Now in my case, I don't want a displacement map. I want a vector map, and a vector map is a bit different. So I'll let this come up and I will leave it quadratic and so on, but I have to send this in a different way, because right now it's going into the displacement, and I don't want the displacement. I want it to be a vector displacement. So what I'm going to do, let me just undo. I'm going to choose the line by selecting here and pressing delete, so I'll break the connection, or just break the connection here by pressing over and finding the break connection under the list. Okay, it's a right click in your mouse. Alright, so I'm going to middle click the file to drag and drop it onto vector displacement, or I could just do this, file, alright, and bring up the vector, same file, which is usually easier. Alright, so I'm going to drop that. Alright, so I got a vector displacement. So let's render and see what we got. Alright, so this is what we have. And as you can see, it's a little over. And, you know, everything's here is way multiplied than what it's supposed to be. So what I need to do is tell Maya how to behave with this. So there's several ways. Well, because I'm using mental ray, I want to use some of the mental ray algorithms to, you know, bring down my render times and just have it done properly. Right now I'm 30-second render, but it's still, you know, we want to keep it proper. So how are we going to do this? How we go about doing this? So we're going to choose the geometry we want. You're going to go over to Window, Render and Render Editors, okay, Rendering Editors, Mental Ray, and we'll go to the Approximation Editor. Now under Approximation we want the Displacement, alright, and we'll go Create and Edit, and we'll just do this every time and it will work perfectly, alright? So what I'm going to change it to is a spatial. I'll leave it on grid. I know I use 6 levels, alright, and from level 1, alright. Now this is the most important. The length, what it does, it creates triangles. And if you want to learn more about this, you know, go into Digital Tutors. There's a wonderful video that explains exactly how this works. But the smaller the number here, alright, the more accurate it will be. So I'm going to just put 0.01 and use view dependent on. So what the view dependent will do, it will make sure that whatever's in my frame, alright, is calculated, and whatever's not in my frame is not calculated. Alright, so let me open my render view again. Alright, I'm gonna just pause the video while we render. Alright, it's done, and if you look, you know, you could actually see that it's a lot smoother. I mean, everything's properly calculated, but it's way over pushed. So now we have to tell Maya how much to pull out. So it's fairly easy. I'll just go over to my displacement control. All right, and under my displacement control, again, it's this button here. It's this icon here. What I'll do is, under scale, I'll just scale this down to 0.2. All right. So now when I'll render, I'll just render these guys here. Okay, so I rendered it again, and you can see that I get a little more, I get closer to what I want. See? So I'll push this down some more. I could also change other things, but this is basically what we're going to use. And there's other ways of using the vector displacement, like by playing around with these settings. But the most important settings is this object. And if you recall from the previous video, when I told you to create the vector displacement, I told you to use this. So let me render again now that I've changed a few parameters, and I'm going to drop down it to 1, and it should be perfect now. Alright, so I have the floating point absolute, and it was 0.05, so I got what I wanted, and I got everything. I think I could still bump it up. I think it's not enough, but you know what, we'll just leave it for now, because it's, you know, for this tutorial it's good enough. So now I also want a little more, you know, to bring in those little tiny details and stuff like that, and for that I'm actually going to use the bump map. And if I go down to bump map, and here under overall bump, I'll just bring in, very simply, a normal map. Here's my normal map, normals. Alright, so now there's a normal map. Render again, and as you can see, I got all those little details back. The only thing I'm going to do now is, you know, just tone it down a bit. 0.2 is usually just right. So when I render next time, it won't be in. So, and what I need to do now is press 3 to smooth it out. So I get all everything I need. Okay. And you know what? I'm gonna bump up my displacement just a bit. Just make it 0.9. Alright, so what I want to do now is bring back my colors. So we'll choose this guy. In the color management, we'll now bring in, actually I got my texture already in. So we're gonna just drag and drop it. Alright. Alright, so now I need my my other passes. Alright, so let's go to my specular pass, which is under reflection, and under the reflection color I'm just going to throw my specular pass because I need the specular. I just want it to be wet in certain areas. So we go Lizzie, specular. Alright, so we got the specular. And now let's go back here. I am going to just tone it down a bit. Not changing too much. Refraction, which belongs to transparency, we'll talk about that later, maybe in a different video, we'll see. Ambient occlusion, of course. Turn that on. Alright, and sorry that my computer is moving a little slow. Alright, the last thing under advanced, you'll see additional colors. Alright, and under the additional colors, we'll add, this is very important, my incandescence. Remember the incandescence? So now, let's render. And in the next video, after we render this, I'll show you how to fix the lighting. So, let me just pause. Alright, so basically what we've done, we've put everything through, but as you can see, everything's too dark, and you know, we're not seeing this pretty well. So in the next video, we're going to talk about the lighting. But let me just recap on what we did. Alright, so let me choose this. Okay, so I'm going to just, you know, organize the... Alright, so basically what we've done, we created a displacement map, we created and we brought in all of the other maps so it will render. So in the next video, basically what we're going to do is fix up the lighting and make this little lizard look a little more real. So see you in the next video.